Hidden in University College Cork's special collections lie 2 issues of the self-proclaimed Irish Republican monthly, An Long, The Ship. The mysterious magazine presents a fascinating snapshot into life in Cork during the weeks immediately preceding the breakout of the Irish Civil War. The paper is filled with a variety of articles, poems, and literary criticisms, all with a strong Republican slant. Both issues contain a number of advertisements for contemporary businesses in Cork, the majority of which are shown to specialize in Irish-made goods and services, as well as several chronicling the entertainment that was being shown in the city by way of film and music. Unfortunately, there is little information surrounding the creation or continuation of the magazine. While the UCC special collections contain examples of the first and second issues, there is little evidence to suggest who was involved in the printing or distribution of these issues, nor to indicate whether there were further issues printed. Curiously, the listed 2 prints price is double what would be considered normal for magazines at the time. The date of the second issue marks its publication on the 10th of June 1922, just over 2 weeks before the conflict between the Free State and anti-treaty forces came to a head, beginning the Civil War. To help contextualize the political climate in which An Long was published, here's a reminder of the storied history of the Irish state that led to the Civil War. In the decades leading up to the war, Cork went from a city that hosted a dedicated World Fair as part of the British Empire, welcoming political and royal delegations from around the world in 1902, and celebrating the visit of King Edward VII in 1903 as a result of the previous year's successful exhibition, to a drastically different identity in the early 1920s as the major city of the rebel county, an identity that was solidified during the Civil War. The Irish Civil War was between the 2 major factions of Irish nationalists, who came into conflict over the Anglo-Irish Treaty of 1921. The treaty marked the end of the Irish War of Independence, but was seen as controversial in Republican circles due to the fact that it signed away 6 of the northern counties of Ireland, which would later become the state of Northern Ireland. Many Republicans found the treaty unacceptable, due to the perception that they had been fighting for a 32-county republic, separate from Great Britain and under the domain of their own people, which was not what the treaty proposed. This caused a divide in the Republican Party, with many of the anti-treaty Republicans claiming that the threat of a continued war with Britain had strong-armed the signing of the treaty without putting it to a proper vote in Ireland. Those of the party who signed the document felt that it was a stepping stone in the right direction, allowing for the country to step back from war while progressing towards the later possibility of a full republic, while the anti-treaty group, which was particularly dominant in Munster, roundly rejected the idea of the continuation of Irish involvement in Great Britain and the Commonwealth. The Civil War lasted from June 1922 to May 1923, and despite its relatively short time frame, was incredibly destructive to the country. Brother fought brother, and families around the country were destroyed as people who fought together during the War of Independence became bitter enemies in the face of the treaty. Relating this back to An Long as a Republican monthly, there is a very strong impression that the magazine's publisher was firmly in the anti-treaty camp. Throughout the magazine, readers are presented with the names of politicians and political activists whose beliefs were public knowledge and widely debated, such as Terence McSweeney, Arthur Griffith, and other members of the Munster Republicans. The articles within An Long never stray for long away from reminding the reader of this strong Republican message, with quotes specifying the English as our enemy, and appealing to the reader by way of presenting all manners of articles stressing the importance of a strong and cohesive Ireland and the struggles which had entailed to bring the country to where it was. Many individual articles throughout the magazine share a common thread of very direct inflammatory language, with no attempts to soften the impact of insulting specific people. There is a call to arms for the younger generation of Irishmen particularly, as well as a focus on the use of the Irish language throughout various articles and poems. Yet, a common thread within An Long is the use of positive vocabulary, interspersed with an underlying optimism. The most common words used throughout the 2 issues of the publication are telling in their focus on painting the Republican struggle as one for the young men, where the opportunities of the future are vivid and optimistic. This revolutionary language and focus on the evolving nature of the Gaelic revival as a vehicle towards a brighter future allows us an interesting examination of the potentially naive enthusiasm of the authors in the lead-up to the Civil War.
Now let's take a look at how the Gaelic revival presents itself in the magazine. It is often stated that the Norman invasion of Ireland was the beginning of the English occupation, kicking off what was, by the 20th century, 700 years of oppression. Various factors contributed to the destruction of the Irish national identity during this time, with a continuing decline in the Irish language spearheaded by the English educational system put in place to promote the English language, primarily in national schools, as well as requiring all legal and mercantile trades to be carried out and chronicled in English. While the Irish language continued to thrive in the rural sections of the country, the famines of the 19th century, which culminated in the Great Potato Famine of 1845 to 1852, forced many native speakers into emigration, choosing a life abroad in the English-speaking world over death in Ireland. Many were not so fortunate as to have this opportunity, though, and as a result, the native Irish-speaking demographic was decimated. The Irish language became an important part of political discussion in the late 19th century as one of the key components of the Gaelic revival. The notion of the language as part of a, quote, forgotten pre-British identity on the island was an important one that helped to tie it strongly to the political movement. The growing nationalist movement sought the establishment of a new concrete national identity by concentrating on the language, the literature, and the arts to promote the ideas of the Irish people as having a separate and unique culture to that of the rest of the United Kingdom. Much of the Irish literature of this era called back to a more heroic era of Irish folklore, with many stories focusing on themes including tyrannical oppression, migration, and the hero's journey to overcome oppression. Much of these themes carried over into the literature present in An Long, with contemporary conflict recontextualized through a generational struggle from a mythical pre-British Ireland. There are several important Irish authors who had early examples of their work published in An Long, with Seamus O'Hea and Frank O'Connor particularly prominent. Seamus O'Hea was a lifelong Irish language activist involved in the foundation of the Cork City branch of An Anya, or the Ring in Irish. This was an organization promoting the use of the Irish language, as well as the use of circular pin badges to indicate the wearer's willingness to speak Gaeilge. O'Hea was elected Ira, or party whip holder, of the organization. O'Hea's contribution to An Long came in the form of one of his early poems, Riceasca, which appears in the first volume of the two, and it is entirely in Irish. Roughly translated, the poem asks a lady to raise her light before she dies as a final reminder of a love that never was. The poem implies that she died from wounds sustained during the conflict. As its title suggests, the poem serves as a wish that peace be found in death. Frank O'Connor's inclusion in the monthly publication was of particular interest to us in the researching of these pieces, due in no small part to the fact that the UCC Library contains many of the author's later works. O'Connor's work appears in the piece under his birth name, Michael O'Donohan, rather than the pseudonym by which he was better known. His reasoning for writing under this pseudonym was to protect himself from criticism for his staunchly Republican viewpoints, without jeopardizing his career as a librarian. This early poem encourages the reader to imagine the sunshine from a cloudy land where flowers attempt to break free of the soil in preparation for a coming spring, which could easily be read as a Republican ambition even were it not included in the pages of our self-proclaimed Republican monthly. An Long provided the then 19-year-old poet with the opportunity to get his work published, perhaps one of the earliest examples of his work appearing in print. O'Connor's Republican leanings were well documented through the history of his life, and at the time of the publication of An Long, he would have been 4 years a member of the 1st Cork Brigade of Irish Republicans, where he would go on to work as part of a propaganda effort during the looming Civil War. These works, along with the politics presented in the magazine, represent a period of change in Cork when the city went from a hidden gem of the British Empire to a rebellious symbol of Irish individualism.